Let's talk about something that most people won't dare to say out loud. There's a kind of man walking among us who doesn't chase attention, doesn't beg for validation, and couldn't care less about popularity contests. He's not trying to be alpha. He's not trying to be beta. He just is. He's the Sigma male. And here's the kicker. He's got the raw materials of a leader, the instincts of a general, the mind of a strategist, and the soul of a warrior. But he won't step up. Why? He's got the fire, but he'd rather warm his hands than light up the whole forest. He's got the vision, but he'd rather watch than draw the map. And the world is watching, waiting, and wondering why the one man who could change the game is still sitting in the back row. Now, don't get it twisted. This isn't about forcing anybody into a role they didn't ask for. This is about reminding a certain type of man that greatness doesn't ask for your permission. It demands your participation. The Sigma male's refusal to lead isn't a lack of ability, it's a choice. A decision to stay on the outside, to operate in shadows, to avoid the weight of influence. And in a world full of noise and chaos, maybe that looks like wisdom. Maybe that even feels like peace. But here's what nobody is saying, that peace might be costing you your purpose. See, life doesn't reward potential, it rewards movement. And you can only walk past so many burning buildings before someone says, "You've got the water, why aren't you using it?" You see, Sigma males are observers. They study the room before they speak. They master the game before they play. But the longer they sit on the sidelines, the more they become part of the very problem they were designed to solve. Leadership isn't about being loud. It's not about being the center of attention. It's not about waving flags and giving commands. Leadership, for you, the Sigma, is about showing people the power of restraint, clarity, independence, and integrity. The kind of leadership that doesn't echo through microphones, but resonates through actions. So today we're going to strip it down. No fluff, no fancy theories, just 5 hard truths. 5 undeniable keys that'll show you how to unlock the leader within you, the leader you were born to be, but the one you've been hiding from. Each of these isn't meant to change who you are. They're meant to wake you up to what you already are, because deep down, you know you were built different. You know you see what others miss. You know you've got something in you that this world desperately needs. So let's go there. Let's break the silence. Let's talk about what happens when the Sigma male finally stops watching and starts leading. Now, here come the keys. Number 1, silence is strength, but stillness is stagnation. There's a power in silence that most people will never understand. The world is full of noise, opinions flying like bullets, everybody trying to be the loudest voice in the room. But the Sigma male, he chooses to observe. He steps back, he listens, studies, and absorbs. While others react, he reflects. That kind of stillness is a strength. Don't get it twisted. It takes discipline not to chase trends. It takes restraint not to engage in every conflict. It takes self-assurance to watch the game unfold without needing to prove a point. But here's where it gets tricky. Silence, when used with intention, becomes a sharpened blade. But silence without motion, that becomes a dull weight. And stillness, if not turned into strategy, becomes stagnation. Let's dig deep into this, because this is where many Sigma males get caught in their own web. You've spent years building a fortress of independence. You've created your own rhythm, your own rules. You don't move with the crowd, and you don't care to impress anyone. That's respectable, but don't confuse detachment with direction. You can't just sit in a tower of thought forever while the world burns around you and say, "I'm doing me." No, at some point that fortress becomes a prison. Stillness starts to feel like safety, but it's actually silence in disguise. And silence that doesn't speak up becomes a missed message. You know what's happening around you. You feel it. You see leaders fumble with empty charisma. You watch systems fail. You notice people being misled. You notice patterns others don't. And yet you stay still. Why? Because it's easier to analyze than to act. It's easier to sit in the comfort of understanding than to bear the discomfort of responsibility. But understand this, you don't have to raise your voice to raise a standard. Let me be real with you. This world is out of balance because the ones who are designed to correct it have decided to stay on the side. Your calm demeanor, that's what we need in leadership. Your ability to think 10 steps ahead, that's exactly what vision requires. Your discipline, your solitude, your emotional control, these are not traits to keep to yourself. They are gifts meant to guide others. Now, I get it. Maybe you don't want the pressure. Maybe you've seen what happens when people follow leaders blindly. Maybe you think, I'll lead by example in silence. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Example without direction leaves people guessing. People don't just need to see your moves. They need to understand your mindset. They need your voice, not for volume, but for value. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a lighthouse that refuses to turn on its light because it doesn't want to stand out. Ships crash, storms win, not because the lighthouse was broken, but because it stayed silent when it mattered most. That's what's happening to so many Sigma males today. You're built like the lighthouse, but you're sitting in the dark. And every time you decide not to act, not to lead, not to speak, you leave someone adrift. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Stillness may feel peaceful, but it often comes at the price of purpose. That doesn't mean you have to abandon your personality. It doesn't mean you suddenly become loud, flashy, or overly present. It means you become active. It means you move with intent. It means you stop sitting on wisdom like it's a secret and you start treating it like a strategy. The world doesn't need more voices. It needs more clarity. It needs men who can stay calm in chaos and still push the mission forward. And Sigma males, you've mastered the calm. Now it's time to master the motion. Stillness isn't the enemy, but it can be the excuse. You weren't designed to just know, you were designed to do. You weren't made to only perceive, you were made to build, shape, shift, and rise. Now this first key is just a start, because once you understand that silence isn't enough on its own, once you realize that sitting with wisdom but doing nothing with it is a waste of potential, then the next step becomes clear. You've got to reframe what leadership means for you. You've got to stop seeing it as a spotlight and start seeing it as a mirror, a reflection of what's possible when you step into your calling without compromising who you are. That's what we're getting into next. Because leadership isn't about changing you. It's about letting people see the version of you that's already ready, already solid, already built different. But before we get there, ask yourself something real. Where in your life are you mistaking stillness for strength? Where have you sat back knowing you could make a difference but chose not to? What ideas, what principles, what insights have you kept locked inside because it felt easier than expressing them? Those answers matter. Because your stillness has been a season, but it doesn't have to be your story. You were not designed to sit in the shadows forever. There's more to you than observation. There's movement waiting. There's momentum buried in that quiet nature. And the moment you stop idolizing stillness as the ultimate strength is the moment you become unstoppable. So let's keep moving. Now that the silence has been addressed, let's talk about the reflection. Let's talk about leadership, not as a title, but as a truth. Leadership is not a microphone, it's a mirror. Let's go deeper. Now that we've cracked open the truth about stillness being a false comfort, we've got to talk about what leadership really is. Because let's be honest, most Sigma males resist leadership because of what they think it is. When you hear the word leader, you picture a person shouting commands, taking center stage, posting every move online, demanding to be seen. That's not you. That's never been you. You don't lead with noise. You lead with presence. And that's where the misunderstanding lives. Leadership isn't a microphone. It's not about volume. It's not about being the loudest. It's a mirror that reflects the truth of who you are so others can see what's possible for themselves. See, people think leadership is about telling others what to do, but real leadership, it's about being someone others can look at and say, if he can move like that, think like that, live like that, maybe I can too. That's the kind of leadership Sigma males were born for. Not the kind that commands attention, but the kind that quietly commands respect. Let's unpack this. You've spent your life crafting a code, a standard. You don't follow trends, you don't bend to pressure, you move with intention, and your decisions are rooted in logic, values, and clarity. You're not chaotic, you're calculated. And believe it or not, that right there, that's leadership in its purest form. Because people don't just follow energy, they follow examples. They follow consistency. They follow calm in crisis. They follow the person who's not flailing in 10 directions, but who walks in one with certainty. And that's you. You're the man who walks a straight line while others zigzag trying to impress. So here's where many Sigma males fall short. They walk that line so quietly, so independently, that nobody ever sees the path. You become the mirror, but you never bother to hold it up. So the people around you, they're still looking for direction while you're already living it. That's not humility. That's hidden leadership. And while it may protect you from attention, it robs others of inspiration. You don't need a platform to be a leader. You just need to reflect a life worth following. That means being intentional about your presence. Not loud, not flashy, but visible. Visible in how you treat people. Visible in how you handle setbacks. Visible in how you make decisions that align with purpose, not popularity. Because here's the truth. People are always watching. Even when you think no one sees you, someone is taking notes. Your discipline is teaching, your restraint is speaking, your mindset is influencing. You don't have to preach to be impactful. You just have to be real enough that your actions preach for you. Now, here's where it gets deeper. Mirrors don't just reflect, they also reveal. And the moment you choose to lead, whether openly or subtly, you're going to expose things in other people. Your standards will challenge their comfort. Your silence will expose their noise. Your order will highlight their chaos. And that's where the pressure begins. That's why so many avoid leadership. It's not the responsibility that's scary, it's the reactions. People will either rise with you or reject you, and both come with weight. But let me tell you this, the mirror is not responsible for what it reflects. Your job is not to change people. Your job is to become so aligned with truth, so grounded in clarity, so centered in your own vision that when people see you, they see what's possible for them. You don't owe anyone perfection, but you owe the world authenticity. You owe the people in your life the courage to be exactly who you are, fully and unapologetically, because that is what creates real influence. Not hype, not headlines, but a life that whispers, you can live this way too. Now listen closely. Once you start embracing this style of leadership, this reflective, intentional, values-driven way of leading, you'll notice something profound. People begin to shift around you. They start asking different questions. They start trusting you with their uncertainty. They start moving in alignment just by being in your proximity. That's not coincidence, that's impact. But let's be clear, this kind of leadership doesn't grow in a vacuum. It has to be aimed, it has to be activated, it has to have direction. And that brings us to the next layer of this journey, influence. Because once you start reflecting something real, people will follow you, but the question is, where are you leading them? And if you haven't answered that yet, then your influence becomes accidental. And influence without intent, that's dangerous. So now that you understand the mirror, now that you understand leadership as a reflection, not a performance, it's time to get intentional. You've got the presence, you've got the control, you've got the respect, but what's the mission? What are you building with your influence? What are you shaping with your mindset? What are you leading people toward, even if you never ask them to follow? That's where we're headed next. Because it's not enough to be respected, you've got to be responsible with that respect. Keynote 3 is about to dig into the next truth. Influence without intent is a missed opportunity. You've earned the influence. Now let's talk about what to do with it. Let's keep going. Influence without intent is a missed opportunity. So now we're here. You've stepped away from stillness. You've accepted that leadership isn't about noise, it's about being a living example. But let's not stop there, because now, whether you asked for it or not, you have influence. And here's the truth. When you move with purpose, people take notice, even if you never say a word. Influence for a Sigma male doesn't look like popularity. It's not a crowd of followers hanging on your every move. It's more subtle, more surgical. It's how your silence calms a room. It's how your discipline inspires change without demanding it. It's how your presence shifts people's thinking without preaching. That's power, but power without direction is a wasted weapon. Let's get real. Every day, whether you want to or not, you're influencing someone. The younger guy watching how you carry yourself. The peer who notices you don't fold under pressure. The colleague who sees you choose principles over shortcuts. They're taking mental notes. And you might not even realize the weight you carry. But let me tell you, you're shaping minds. You're modeling strength, focus, detachment, and conviction. But here's the catch. If you don't aim your influence, it doesn't build anything. It just lingers. It becomes static. It inspires feelings but doesn't fuel action. Let me break it down. Imagine a man walking through the desert with a full canteen while people around him are dying of thirst. He didn't cause the drought. He's not shouting about the water, but he knows he's got it. The question is, what's he going to do with it? That's influence without intent, and it's everywhere. People with wisdom, but no direction. People with strength, but no mission. People with presence, but no purpose. Sigma males often fall into this trap because their power isn't loud, it's internal. An internal influence feels personal until you realize it's relational. You're not here just to master your own life. You're here to build something that outlives you, and that doesn't happen accidentally. You have to choose what your influence is going to do. You have to decide what kind of impact you want to leave behind. And that doesn't mean becoming something you're not. It means clarifying your why. Why are you the way you are? What truth are you protecting? What values are you guarding in silence? And who could benefit if you turn those values into a vision? It doesn't take a grand stage. It doesn't take a movement or a microphone. It starts with direction. Maybe you don't want followers. That's fine, but ask yourself this. What system, what structure, what solution are you leaving behind that others can benefit from? Because leadership, real leadership, isn't about control, it's about contribution. Influence is not for your ego, it's for your legacy. So how do you turn raw influence into intentional impact? Let's break it down. Define your core value, not the ones you inherited, not the ones you pretend to have, the real ones. What hill would you die on? What belief do you live by when no one's watching? Those are your foundation. Translate those values into action. Let people see them. If you value freedom, live with boundaries. If you value truth, don't bite your tongue when it matters. If you value discipline, let it show in your habits, not your words. Create systems, not just signals. Don't just be an example, build something others can follow. That might be a framework, a set of principles, a mentorship model, a creative path. Anything that turns your way of living into a blueprint someone else can walk. Decide who you're helping, even if they never thank you. True leadership isn't transactional. You don't serve for applause. You serve because you were built to pour out what others need. Even when you don't get a return. Let your mission grow bigger than your mood. There will be days you don't feel like it, days when solitude feels safer. But if you've defined your purpose, then your influence moves with momentum, not emotion. Remember this, the world is not short on voices, it's short on vision. You don't need to be loud to lead, but you do need to be intentional. And the moment you stop treating your influence like a side effect and start treating it like a tool, that's when things shift. That's when your silence becomes strategy. Your values become a path. Your presence becomes a place people go to learn how to live. That's leadership the Sigma way. Not flashy, not forced, but focused, rooted in purpose, designed for legacy. So now that we've addressed your influence, here's the next evolution. Because leadership doesn't just flow from your strengths, it's forged in your flaws. And if you're going to lead with depth, not just discipline, you're going to have to confront the side of you most people never see. Get ready for keynote 4. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's wisdom in disguise, because the power you hide may be the healing someone else needs. Let's unlock that. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's wisdom in disguise. You've walked through stillness, you've understood that leadership isn't a show, it's a reflection. You've discovered that influence without intent is nothing more than wasted potential. And now we arrive at the part most men never want to touch. Not because they can't, but because they were never taught how. Let's be clear. You've been strong your whole life, calculated, composed. You wear silence like armor and solitude like a crown. You move through life as if nothing rattles you. But let me ask you something. What happens when the armor gets too heavy? What do you do when your strength starts feeling like a prison? See, society applauds the silent man, the one who doesn't complain, the one who holds it together. But behind that applause is a dangerous myth. That vulnerability is weakness. Let's kill that lie right now. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is wisdom, wrapped in the raw truth of your humanity. And until you embrace that truth, until you allow yourself to be seen fully and without filters, you'll never lead with depth. You'll lead with control. You'll lead with appearance, but never with soul. Sigma males are powerful because of their self-reliance, but they become transformational when they learn how to reveal what's real without losing control. Let me break it down. The world doesn't need another perfect man. It doesn't need another flawless role model. It needs real men. Men who've bled and still chose to walk. Men who've broken and rebuilt without shame. Men who know how to walk into a room and say, I don't have it all figured out, but I'm still moving forward. That's power. That's leadership with depth, because it connects, it translates, it sticks. See, people aren't moved by how invincible you look. They're moved by how honest you're willing to be, not for sympathy, but for connection. You want to build trust? Be honest about the storm you've survived. You want to build loyalty? Be open about the doubt you conquered. You want to build legacy? Show others how to navigate failure without falling apart. But here's the catch. You've been trained to believe that exposure equals vulnerability, so you hide behind strength. You use silence as a shield. You act like you're unaffected. But deep down, you know there's more. There's pain you haven't unpacked. There's pressure you've buried. There's truth you've never spoken. Not because you're weak, but because the world never gave you permission. Well, here it is. You don't need permission to be whole. And wholeness includes pain. It includes fear. It includes doubt, confusion, trauma, and yes, tears. And when you learn how to share those scars without shame, you become undeniable. Let me show you the power of this. When you open up, not all at once, not recklessly, but intentionally, you do something most leaders can't. You give people the strength to face themselves, not by saving them, not by lecturing them, but by showing them. Because your story is not just for you. Your healing, that's a blueprint. Your comeback, that's a lesson. Your struggle, That's someone else's permission to keep going. Think about this. What if the very thing you've been hiding is the thing someone else needs to hear? What if the truth you're afraid to tell is the key to unlocking somebody else's transformation? This is where leadership becomes generational, not because you're perfect, but because you're honest, you're present, you're human. That's what legacy is made of, not just systems and philosophies, but stories. Now, don't get it twisted. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing. It doesn't mean crying on every platform. It means choosing to lead from your truth instead of your image. It means understanding that transparency is strength under control. It's like a sword, sharp, intentional, not flailing. Used wisely, it can cut through silence and reach hearts. So here's what vulnerability requires from you. Courage to confront yourself. The man in the mirror isn't your enemy. He's your guide. What truths are you avoiding? What pain have you normalized? What emotions do you refuse to feel? Wisdom in your delivery. Not everyone deserves access to your deepest struggles, but someone does. And when you choose the right moment with the right intention, your vulnerability becomes a bridge, not a broadcast. Faith in your healing. Don't share from wounds, share from scars. Let people see the journey, not just the injury. Show them what resilience looks like, not just what suffering feels like. Consistency through discomfort. Being vulnerable is not a one-time act. It's a posture. It's a willingness to lead from your humanity, even when it's uncomfortable. Purpose beyond pride. Vulnerability will challenge your ego. But remember, this isn't about you. It's about what your truth can build in others. And that's bigger than pride. So here's the shift. You're not less of a Sigma for opening up. You're more. You're not abandoning strength. You're upgrading it. Because vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength. It's what gives your strength dimension. Let's make this clear. The world doesn't need another untouchable man. It needs the man who's lived through hell and still chose to walk others through it. That's what makes you unforgettable. That's what makes your leadership irreplaceable. Now, we've gone deep. But it doesn't stop here, because after vulnerability comes responsibility, and the greatest responsibility of all is what you pass on. Legacy is not what you leave behind, it's what you set in motion. Let's bring it home. You've walked the road of stillness. You've embraced silent strength. You've stepped into influence with intention. You've peeled back the armor to reveal your humanity. Now the final question stands in front of you like a mirror. What will outlive you? Legacy, a word that gets thrown around like a slogan, but let's strip away the glamour. Because legacy isn't just your name in stone. It's not about titles, trophies, or timeline. Legacy is motion. It's the ripple effect of who you are carried into spaces you'll never enter. It's the lesson in someone else's mind because of how you moved. It's the standard you held that reshaped someone's definition of manhood. It's the permission you gave without speaking to live with purpose. See, legacy doesn't wait until you're gone. It starts while you're still breathing. It starts the moment you stop living just for yourself and start building beyond yourself. And Sigma males, listen closely. You were never meant to live only in isolation. Solitude is your sanctuary, yes, but legacy is your assignment. Because what good is your wisdom if it ends with you? What's the value of your discipline if no one else learns from it? What does your strength mean if it never becomes someone else's foundation? Legacy is a relay, not a monument. The world may try to make you believe that legacy is about being remembered, but let me tell you, being remembered means nothing if you didn't change something. And Sigma males are wired to shift systems, to challenge norms, to redefine expectations. But it only matters if those shifts continue without you. So how do you build legacy the Sigma way? Let's dive into the blueprint. 1. Live with legacy in mind daily. Legacy isn't a future project. It's a now practice. Every decision you make, every habit you keep, every value you uphold, that's legacy in action. When you wake up in the morning and choose consistency over chaos, you're creating a pattern someone else can follow. When you reject shortcuts in favor of integrity, you're teaching by example. And when you take responsibility for your actions, even in silence, you're planting seeds for generational growth. Live today like someone is depending on your discipline tomorrow, because they are. To document what you've learned. The mind of a Sigma male is a vault. Ideas, experiences, failures, reflections, it's all in there. But if it stays locked, the next man starts from scratch. Write, record, teach, pass it down. You don't have to be a public speaker. You don't have to publish a book. But you owe it to the next generation to transfer your truth. Because legacy that's not documented is legacy that disappears when you do. Mentor without a title. You don't need a platform to lead. You don't need permission to pour into someone. Mentorship isn't about hierarchy, it's about presence. Be the man someone can study, not because you told them to, but because your life demands their attention. Ask yourself, who are you modeling manhood for? Whose mindset are you shaping without even knowing it? And if you do know, are you showing up with intentionality? True mentorship is quiet leadership that changes lives. 4, create something that solves a problem. Legacy isn't abstract, it's practical. Build a system, a tool, a method, a movement, something tangible that continues to operate when you step away. It could be a business, a philosophy, a framework, or even a family tradition, but it needs to serve. That's the key. Legacy without service is vanity. Legacy that solves problems, that's where your impact becomes permanent. Ask yourself, what gap can I fill? What pain have I experienced that I can now prevent for others? What structure can I build that makes success accessible for someone who thinks it's out of reach? Set it in motion, then step back and let it grow. 5, detach from recognition, attach to purpose. If you're building legacy to be seen, you're building a statue. But if you're building legacy because purpose demands it, then you're planting an orchard that will feed generations. You may never be applauded. You may never trend, but if your influence moves silently through the lives of others, transforming thinking, elevating behavior, changing the course of a family, a community, or a culture, then your legacy is secure. Because legacy isn't about being known. It's about making a difference. And real leaders, the kind who move without needing credit, they understand the credit doesn't matter. The cause does. So here we are, at the edge of the final step. You've realized stillness isn't weakness, it's clarity. You've embraced that leading by example is louder than leading by command. You've committed to wielding your influence with purpose. You've found courage in your truth, power in your vulnerability, and now you're standing at the threshold of your true impact. You are not here just to live. You are here to launch, to initiate something real, to set something in motion that breathes long after your presence is gone. Legacy is not about you being remembered. It's about people living better because you existed. So the question becomes, what motion are you setting today that will still be moving decades from now? Because when all is said and done, it won't be your silence, your solitude, or even your strength that defines you. It will be your decision to lead without needing to lead, to influence without shouting, to build without being begged, to give what only you were designed to give. And that, my brother, is the Sigma way. Your legacy starts now. Not when you're gone, not when you're ready, not when you're perfect, now. So rise up, move, set it in motion, the silent charge. From refusal to responsibility. You've heard the call, not the loud one, not the one broadcasted by crowds or culture, but the quiet one, the one that's been humming in the background of your life, waiting for you to stop ignoring it. See, you've always known there was something different about you. You don't follow, you don't chase, you observe. You build, you walk your own pace. You've never needed validation because the path you're on wasn't built for popularity, it was built for purpose. But here's the truth we've unraveled across every keynote. The path of the Sigma male is not one of retreat, it is one of clarity, depth, and impact. But it can no longer be a path of refusal, because refusing to lead isn't noble anymore. It's neglect. Neglecting the wisdom that could free others, neglecting the influence that could change lives, neglecting the example that could shift entire generations. Let's rewind. In the beginning, we talked about stillness, that calm, calculated nature you carry like a second skin. It's what allows you to listen when others react, to process before pouncing. That quiet presence isn't emptiness, it's design, and you've used it to avoid the noise. Good. But avoiding the noise is not the same as avoiding impact. Your stillness isn't supposed to isolate you, it's supposed to center you. You don't withdraw from the world because you're afraid. You retreat to understand it, and once you do, your responsibility becomes clear. Move with intention, speak with precision, act with conviction. And we peel that layer back in keynote 2. The silent influence you carry is dangerous when left unchecked. People are watching, not because you're flashy, but because your life broadcasts a message, whether you say a word or not. So what are you modeling? Are you reinforcing the idea that leadership is about dominance? Or are you subtly showing the world that strength can be still, focused, deliberate? Influence unused becomes a shadow, but when you own it, it becomes a mirror, reflecting what others could become if they just believed a little more. But believing isn't enough if it's built on illusion. So we dug into vulnerability. That's where it got real. Because most of the world doesn't expect Sigma males to break. They assume you're above it all. But that's not leadership, that's performance. You weren't built to perform, you were built to connect. And vulnerability is not a weakness in your structure, it's the foundation of your strength. The day you admit that you're human is the day your leadership becomes undeniable. Because people don't follow perfection, they follow truth. And when your truth starts shaping lives, when your past starts paving the way for someone else's future, then we move into the final terrain, legacy. Legacy isn't an inheritance, it's an investment. It's not what people get after you're gone, it's what people carry forward while you're still here. And Sigma males were never meant to die with full minds. You were meant to empty yourself into something lasting. A system, a structure, a philosophy, a mindset, something that keeps working after you stop talking. But you can't build legacy without ownership. And this is where the final shift happens. You're no longer allowed to refuse, not because the world demands you to lead, but because you've grown enough to know that leadership isn't about being seen, it's about being useful. So here it is, the quiet charge. You've been prepared for this moment all your life, not through applause, not through promotions, but through the late nights, the heavy thoughts, the silent decisions, the days you kept moving when no one noticed, the moments you chose principle over popularity, the times you walked away from noise to hear your own voice clearly. That's what shaped you, not luck, not chance, not privilege, choice. And now the choice is this: will you continue living for yourself, or will you become the man who plants trees he'll never sit under? Will you bury your wisdom under silence, or will you release it into the world like wildfire? Will you play small because leadership feels uncomfortable, or will you step into it not for credit, but for consequence? Because the world is starving for real, for substance, for men who don't need to lead loudly, but can lead clearly, for men who've seen the edge and walked back with answers, for men who don't lead from thrones, but from trenches. That's you, not a follower, not a dictator, but a quiet builder of worlds. You are the blueprint for a new kind of leadership. Not the flashy kind, the functional kind. The kind that doesn't need a mic to be heard, the kind that sets fires with whispers. the kind that reshapes generations through one committed life. So this is your moment to transition from understanding to embodying, from thinking to building, from silence to substance. You're not waiting anymore. You're not avoiding it. You're not pretending you don't know the impact you hold. You do know. And now you carry it, not with pressure, but with purpose. Not for applause, but for alignment. Not because you have to, but because you can. And if not you, who? If not now, when? The world won't beg you. It shouldn't have to. You are a born leader. The only thing that ever stood between you and greatness was the refusal to step forward. That ends today. This is your time. This is your charge. This is your motion. Start walking.